what we did on Wednesday, and then we'll keep it moving. So what we did on Wednesday was working with MAF. MAF is the process of multiply, add, factor. Find two numbers that multiply to this and add to this. So before we brought letters and variables into it, we did it with numbers. So for example, find two numbers that multiply to 15 and add up to 8. First you figure out what multiplies to 15. And then you take those numbers and you add them up to figure out what's going to give you 8. So that's what we did for examples 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, for some of you, doing this, probably doing your head. But can't do it in your head. There's no shame in writing out the factors and then starting to add them up. You know yourself better than anyone else. So that's where we started. Then we brought the variables into the problem. So it's an easy 3-step process. First step is to take out the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor is biggest number. Find the biggest number that will divide out. If they have the same variable, you take it out, and then you multiply those parts together. So, key thing here is if the greatest common factor is 1, then we just go right ahead and skip to step number 2. You can't take it. You can't take anything out other than 1. You just go on to step number 2. Step 2 is where you do MAF. M means multiply, and you use the last term to do that. A means add, you use the middle term to do that. But F means your factors. Find two numbers that multiply to 48, you can add to 16. This is 12 and 4. Last step is where you write the answer in parentheses. Like I said, the order does not matter. P plus 12 and P plus 4 is the same thing as P plus 4 and P plus 12. Order doesn't matter as long as the numbers are right. And then we did 3 examples. Step 1, look for the GCF. Step 2, do MAF. Step 3, write the answer. GCF, MAF, write the answer. GCF, MAF, write the answer. So it's repeating the same cycle over and over and over again. So it's not a hard problem, but you do need to know how to multiply. You have to know how to add. In order to go, 2 things would be good to know. Any questions before we do some more examples? Yeah, go ahead.
Is it a just close up your second people?
Okay, well, we can make that happen. So at least you know when you come back up in here on Wednesday, you come sit in the front. At least, of course, on Monday, well, on Tuesday, starting on Tuesday, remember everyone that's a hybrid student comes in, so you all will be situated into your seats because you'll be combined with those that come in group A. So I know that's Janiyah, Nyla, Kalade, Shemaya, Naomi, Io, Sam. So there'll be about 13, 14 people in here. So you all be situated out. Now, if you know your person needs to sit in the front because you need to be able to see, shoot me an email, let me know that. That way, when I'm setting up the seating chart, I know to make sure you're in the front. So I already know in advance in front. All right. So, example 5. We got x squared minus 8x minus 33. So we have the factors. So, first step, we start with the greatest common factor. So we always start with the greatest common factor. So greatest common factor is biggest number. You have 1, you have 8, you have 33. Is there anything that will divide out of all three of them? Yeah. 1. So, 1. So I'm going to give you all a little hint. If any of those numbers is a 1, then the biggest number you can divide out is a 1. Because what's the only way that you can multiply to 1? 1 times 1. So that means the only number that's going to work is 1. All right, same variable. Do we have the same variable throughout the whole problem? No. So that means your greatest common factor is 1. And since your greatest common factor is 1, we can just keep going. So, most of you, if you're good with greatest common factor, you shouldn't have to show this part. This part you shouldn't have to show if you're good with greatest common factor. Now, you need to keep showing it because you need to keep, with the practice, to keep doing it. But this GCF part, unless there's actual greatest common factor, you shouldn't have to keep showing it. So this top part is more so optional, unless you actually have a greatest common factor. So now let's do the MAF part. That's step 2. Again, those of you who are at home, if you have a question, come off mute and ask. I got 7 people in here, so of course they're going to take my attention. So M goes with your last term. So your last term is negative 33. A is your middle term. And that's negative 8. So for your F, you need 2 numbers that multiply to negative 33 and add up to negative 8. Multiply to negative 33 and add up to negative 8. So always start with the multiplying part. What will multiply to negative 33? 11 times, so 11 times negative 3? Yeah. So these are the 2 that I heard. So I heard one from Amari and one from Willie. But only one of these is going to work. Only one can work. Both of these will give me negative 33, but only one of them will add up to negative 8. And that's what I agree with. So negative 11 plus 3 is equal to negative 8, which is what you want. 11 plus negative 3 is 8. But we need a negative 8. So remember, it has to match up sign and the number. The number and the sign have to be what you need. That makes sense? Anybody got any questions? Mari, you good? Good. So, now we're at a point where we can write our answer. We take my problem. We open up 2 parentheses. So I remember Io asking this question on Wednesday. Does the variable always have to come first? The variable comes first if you start it with it. You start it with the variable, it goes first. With an X in each parentheses, and then take your two numbers and put them in the parentheses. So that's your factored answer. That's your factored answer. Any questions? Example 5. Well, the X was a part of the problem, right? Because you need to get X squared. I multiply X times X, that gives me X squared. So when I multiply the answer, I should go back to where I started. Correct. So yes, that's why we put the variable back. I should always be able to take your answer, multiply it out, and end up back where you started. Good question there. Any other questions before we move to 6? You straight to go? All right. Let's do example 6. So example 6, same thing. Y squared plus 18y plus 81. Always start with the greatest common factor. So, what's the biggest number that will divide out of 1, 18, and 81? 1. Remember the trick I told you. If any of those numbers is a 1, then the biggest number is 1. Do they have the same variable? No, because 81 doesn't have a 1 in it. So your greatest common factor is 1. So GCF is pretty simple to work with. So MAF time. M is the last number, 81. A is the middle number, 18. So we need two numbers that multiply to 81 and add to 18. 99. Now, if you know that you struggle with your multiplication, take a second and think about it. Let's see. Ray Sean can do it like that. Some people might not be able to do it like that. So take a moment and think about it. 9 plus 9 is 18. 9 times 9 is 81. So we got our winning combination. So now we can run our answer. So we have our problem. Put our two parentheses. So y squared is y times y. And our two numbers go inside. What do you notice about two parentheses? They're the same. So there are two ways that we can write this answer. We can leave it like this, or we can write it as y plus 9 squared. You're taking something and multiplying it times itself. That's why you can write it as squared. Does it matter which way you give the answer? No. Either way works. Either way works. Any questions? Example 6. Any questions, anybody at home? Yeah, type it in the chat if you have any questions. If I don't get to it, just remind me. When my attention is on, my attention will get caught very easily by the side. There are 7 people in the class. All right, so example 7. What do you notice about example 7? There's only 2 terms. So compare example 6 to example 7. Which one is missing? The first, the middle, or the end? The middle is missing. So we have 2 terms, and the middle term is missing. And the middle is missing. So when the middle is missing, that means it is equal to 0. It's not there. The middle is missing, so the middle is 0. So that's an important thing to know when we're doing MAF. If the middle's not there, then it's equal to 0. Here's where that's going to show up. Let's first do greatest common factor. What's the biggest number? Biggest number is still 1. You got a 1 and a 49, so it's still 1. Does everything have the same variable? No. So GCF is 1. And we keep it going. And we keep moving. Remember, the middle is 0. Here's where this is about to show up. M is normally the last term. So we still have the last term. That's negative 49. A is normally what?
The middle.
A is normally the middle. But we don't have a middle.
So it's going to be 0.
So it's going to be 0. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
I got the answer. I was just waiting.
Oh, ready to tell me 2 numbers?
Oh, the 2 numbers? Negative 7 and 7.
So the 2 numbers that multiply to negative 49 and add up to 0 are negative 7 and 7. So if the middle term is not there, you're just looking to see what will add up to 0. You're just looking to see what adds up to 0. So no, it can't be z minus 49 and z plus 49, because if I multiply that back out, 49 times 49 is 2,401. That's not 2,401. So I like the attempt, but make sure you're following each of the steps. So we've got our numbers, so we can write our answer. Z squared minus 49 we need the two parentheses. Z squared means Z and Z. Minus 7 plus 7. Let's see, I get it now. I got to think of the multiples. All right. So Z minus 7 and Z plus 7. That is your factored in. That's your factored in. The only thing that was different is that the middle term was 0. So we saw what happens if the middle term is 0. So, any questions? 5, 6, or 7? Does the order matter? No. So if you wrote this answer as Z plus 7 and Z minus 7, that's okay. So if you wrote it like that, you're good. Great, brother? Any questions before we finally do a greatest common factor? If the GCF being 1 all the time, it's kind of dry. It's fun, it's nice, keeps it simple, but that's dry. Tyra looks like she needs her brain stimulated. She needs something to make it more challenging. Let's go ahead and do that. Page. All right, so now we have examples. We're going to do some examples of which there's the greatest common factor. So the first one I did, so I'm going to go through it, explain each of the parts. So all you have to do is pay attention, ask questions where you get stuck. So that's all you have to do for this example. So you have 3t to the third minus 30t squared plus 63t. So the first step is to take out the greatest common factor. You got a 3, a 30, and a 63. All three of those numbers you can divide by 3. So now you have the biggest number of 3. All three of them have the letter t in it. So you can take out a t. So the greatest common factor is 3t. Greatest common factor is 3t. So that's why we spent the week doing greatest common factor. If you have a greatest common factor, if you have a GCF, you must divide it out. If you have a greatest common factor, you must divide it out. Point blank, period, end of story. You have a greatest common factor, divide it out. So this is where it was divided out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. T to the third divided by t is t squared. 30 divided by 3 is 10. That should be squared, and that would be 10t. 63 divided by 3 is 21. T drop out. And this is what you get at the end of step 1. Any questions before we continue? So now we actually had to take something out. Now, as far as this problem is concerned, the 3t that we took out, that's done. We don't do anything else to that part of the problem. That's finished. Now we just worry about what's in the parentheses. So the only thing we're worrying about now is what's in the parentheses. So now we do MAF. Last term was 21, middle term is -10. Two numbers that multiply to 21 adds -10, -7, -3. So that's the end of step number 2. So step 3 is writing out the answer. So the 3t that we didn't touch stays. You open up some parentheses. T squared goes in the front. And the two numbers going behind it. So there's your answer. So that's how it all works out. Again, the order doesn't matter. If you put t minus 3 first, it doesn't hurt it. But that's how it is start to finish. So notice the only thing that we added is that we did a GCF. Now we actually did one. So, anybody got any questions on example 2? Let's start up in here anyway. Oh, not 1. Example 1. We all good in here? It's a little bit better being in a classroom than trying to do it from home. Good. Make sure your butt's back up in here on Wednesday. Now I'm going to your house and cry.
Wait, I was gonna start school on Tuesday.
Well, you start Tuesday, but I won't see you till Wednesday. Now the plus side is if you are in the building and you know you have a math question, even if it's not the math day, you can still come and ask questions. I'll still be here. I ain't going nowhere. All right, any questions at home before we do example 2? Probably be able to get 2 examples in before time runs out on this. That 250%. So let's kick things off with example 2. So we got 5x squared minus 45x plus 100. So we're doing the same 3 steps from up above. Same 3 steps. So look at the numbers first. What can you do? What number can we divide out of each part? So each number, you can take out a 5. So the GCF, the biggest number, 5. Can we take out the same variable? No. So your greatest common factor is 5. So again, you don't have to keep writing this if you know the steps now. For all intents and purposes, you can just write GCF equals 5 and then keep it moving. If you know what the steps are at this point. Oops. Can't underline it yet. Since the GCF is 5, now you gotta divide it out. So take your problem, 5x squared minus 45x plus 100, divide everything by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, 45 divided by 5 is 9, 100 divided by 5 is 20. And then 5 goes in front. Don't close your eyes too much, because you end up missing a lot. Any questions? Step number 1. Yeah, those of you who are at home, And then we'll select each straight, those who are at home, ask the question. Otherwise, the 7 wonderful folks here will get all of my attention. Alright, so the 5, that's done. You don't have to touch that for the rest of the problem. We'll worry about everything else. I'm gonna do this in a different color. X squared minus 9x plus 20. What's the m? M is 20. What's the a? Negative 9. So we need two numbers that multiply to 20 and add to negative 9. I know Willie got it. Anyone else got it?
Yeah.
Good.
Wait, yeah. 5 and 4?
So I like 5 and 4. Negative 5 and negative. So this gives me a nice time to tell you the trick to figuring out how the numbers work. So if the number you need to multiply to is positive and the number that it adds to is positive, then the two numbers are going to be positive. You're going to have two positive numbers. If the number that it needs to multiply to is positive, but the adding number is negative, then you're going to have two negatives. So those two are pretty simple. If the number it needs to multiply to is negative, but the adding number is positive, one of your numbers is going to be positive, one of your numbers is going to be negative, and the bigger number has to be positive. So the B means bigger. And then if the number it multiplies is negative and the adding number is negative, one positive, one negative, but the bigger number has to be negative. So this is a trick. Well, it's not so much a trick because it's going to work all the time, of figuring out how the numbers are going to work. So leave that up there for the rest of the problem for those of you who are copying it down. You got negative 5, you got negative 4. So now we can write our answer. The 5 comes down because we took it out already. 2 parentheses. X squared is x times x. Negative 5 and negative 4. There's your factored answer. So again, the only other step, the only other new step is taking out a greatest common factor. Any other questions before we do one more example and then that's that? Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's not difficult. It's not hard. If you know how to multiply, this is easy. All right, so let's do the last problem. X to the third minus 3x squared minus 10x. I'll have to erase that in a second, but I'll keep it up as long as I can. So, GCF, what's the biggest number? 1. So, biggest number is 1. Do they all have the same variable?
Yes.
Yep, so we pull out the variable. So your greatest common factor is 1x. So that's what we. Go ahead. biggest number is the number that divides out of everything that you see up there. So we're going to divide everything by 1x. So 1x, 1x, 1x. So 1 divided by 1 is still 1. X to the third divided by x is x squared. Remember, you subtract the exponents. 3 divided by 1 is 3. Subtract the exponents, that's 3x. 10 divided by 1 is 10. 1 minus 1 is 0, so the exponents drop out. So 1x over 1. So that's greatest common factor. Sometimes your greatest common factor will be a number. Sometimes it will be a variable. Sometimes it will be a combination of both. So the x is done. So it's automatically a part of the final answer. So that x is done. Now we worry about the parentheses. So m is the last number,
-2.
negative 10. A,
-3.
negative 3. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3. Try again.
2 and 5. Wait.
So it is 2 and 5. Now which one is negative?
Both. Wait. No.
Ah. Because remember, it has to add to a negative 3. Is that what you was going to say?
Which end did we flip though?
What, negative 5 and positive 2?
Wait, I don't think that matters.
No, that part doesn't matter. As long as the numbers are right, the order doesn't matter. So, -2 times, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. So we straighten. Right our parentheses. X squared is x times x. 2 goes in one parentheses. Negative 5 goes in the other. We finished. Again, the order doesn't matter. Order part doesn't matter. All right. So that